If you think back just a few years, ghost kitchens seemed like the next big thing in restaurants. You saw celebrities like Mr. Beast and George Lopez launching their own ghost kitchen brands, with hundreds of millions of dollars pouring in on the promise that the lower overhead costs, lack of front of house, lack of servers, and flexible location options would make ghost kitchens a great investment. So what went wrong? Ghost kitchens have repeatedly gone bankrupt, losing hundreds of millions of dollars in investor dollars along the way as the top brands have been wiped out. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. What made ghost kitchens ultimately a dangerous investment, and what you can use from what actually worked about ghost kitchens to make your physical restaurant location more efficient. The best place to start in understanding why ghost kitchens were such a financial nightmare is defining what a ghost kitchen is. A restaurant without a dining space, one that focuses purely on delivery. It doesn't need a dining room, and it doesn't need front of house staff, which in theory are going to save more than 30% from that restaurant's costs. It also means that the location options are significantly more flexible and will go for a lower dollar per square foot amount because they don't have to be on high traffic streets as a result of most of the traffic coming from delivery orders. So what made the model so attractive were those low overhead costs, lower rent, lower utilities because of no dining room, lower staffing costs, lower maintenance costs, and the extremely low setup costs. Because the restaurant didn't need a build out in the dining room anymore and could instead run from any commercial kitchen facility, it meant that starting a ghost kitchen often cost less than $20,000 versus over $100,000 average for a physical brick and mortar location. The other massive benefit from investors' perspective was the scalability inherent in that ghost kitchen model, meaning that once a ghost kitchen concept started working, theoretically, that ghost kitchen could be very rapidly expanded as a result of those low upfront costs to start a location. You could operate multiple ghost kitchen restaurant concepts from a single kitchen, and when one started to work, you could immediately roll it out to hundreds of restaurants' kitchens, just like Mr. Beast did in going from 0 to over 300 locations with his Mr. Beast Burger concept in less than 2 years. So you may be wondering, Adam, if they have all of these benefits, how could they have failed so massively? And the answer there is the combination of high fees as well as a few other factors that we're about to cover. But let's start with the fee structure. While the overhead and startup costs were lower, the huge aspect that drove up ghost kitchen costs was the third-party delivery app fees, which range in ghost kitchens from 30% all the way up to more than 40% when you stack on top the promotions that those apps require you to run for maximum discovery. If you look at the typical costs of a restaurant, the front of house labor costs and dining room utilities are going to be less than 30%. So when you're trading a less than 30% cost for taking on more than 30% in third-party delivery app fees, it ends up breaking the efficiency that you gain and actually making it more expensive net to run and reducing the margin profile, which is particularly dangerous when it's stacked on top of the next major reason. The ghost kitchen concepts have a lower perceived value in the minds of guests. To understand why that is, imagine how it is that guests end up developing idea of which restaurants are good and worth trying. It involves eating with their eyes, and I'm not just talking about eating the food with their eyes. I mean telling themselves a story about the quality of food based on the dining room they see. All of these different parts of the experience end up developing that guest's perceived value of a given brand. It's why they're willing to pay more for independent, locally run restaurants. It's all of the little features in that restaurant's dining room, like my friend from Otavio's, how she set it up with her family's photography and heirlooms that pay homage to her family from Italy, and all these other little pieces that end up making guests value her experience that much more. There was a very interesting study that was done on how consumers rate different wine tastes. Consumers were given $1 glass of wine versus $100 glass of wine, and each of them had their respective of bottles and price tags on. What people didn't know is that they switched the wine from the $100 bottle into the $1 bottle and the $1 bottle into the $100 bottle. But what was so interesting about this study is that all of the customers that got the $100 bottle of wine with the $1 wine inside of it rated that wine as significantly better, higher quality. And the same logic applies to developing your guests' perception in your dining room, where when they are able to tell themselves the story of what your restaurant is and what it stands for and how authentic your cuisine type is, as a result of taking in that dining room ambiance, they end up thinking of your food that much more highly and being willing to pay more for it. And when you are a ghost kitchen that doesn't actually have a dining room and that is just making your food in a commercial kitchen facility, you lose that branding benefit that is so foundational to developing your customers' perception of your brand and admiration for your brand. The third reason was the slap they get from Google. A slap means when Google penalizes a specific business and makes them unable to show up for the terms that would lead to them getting new customers. In the case of a ghost kitchen, that is literally all restaurant keywords, from Mexican restaurant to Mexican food to tacos. When people type these terms into Google, Google only shows results that are traditional brick and mortar restaurants, which means that the number one way for the ghost kitchens to acquire customers is actually blocked to them. And what that leads to is not only losing all of those potential customers in their area that are searching for their type of food, because Google doesn't recognize a ghost kitchen as a traditional restaurant type and avoid showing people those results, but it also leads to a massive over-reliance on those delivery apps that again are taking a 30% fee on every transaction and wiping out any efficiency gain that comes from not having a front of house. The other thing that I heard really led to the downfall of this trend was the fact that there was no dedicated customer service rep within the ghost kitchen model to deal with guest concerns and issues, which was particularly problematic with that over-reliance on the delivery apps and led to losing control over the customer experience. So what would happen as a result of this, order would be placed on DoorDash or Uber Eats, and every so often something would go wrong with that delivery order. Whether it was an item that was left out, the guest would try and get in touch with the restaurant and say, hey, I'm missing an item, and the restaurant wouldn't have a natural customer service person to field that concern. So it would instead go to the DoorDash rep or the Uber Eats rep, who would inevitably side with the guest, remove that order from the ghost kitchen, and lead to that ghost kitchen incurring all of the food costs, giving a full refund to the guest, and the guest leaving with a very bad taste in their mouth that something went wrong and there was nobody at the restaurant to address it. Whereas in a traditional restaurant model, what would happen there is there would be dedicated front of house staff, often a server or expediter, that would be able to answer the phone or physically connect with guests, address any concerns they're having, and work towards solutions with them that not only enable that restaurant to save the money having to issue a refund each time, but also save the guest relationship and provide a really positive customer service experience that leads to trust being maintained and preserved. It's the combination of each of these factors, the loss of control, the inability to provide holistic customer service, guests not having a clear way to convert into being full-blown customers, leads to these ghost kitchen models being so problematic. To give you a sense of just how severe this issue was, look at Mr. Beast Burger as an example, which had hundreds of millions of social media followers and views pumped behind it to try and make this brand successful, and yet it ended in disaster, where the lack of customer service, the lack of quality control, led to Mr. Beast ultimately not wanting to be affiliated at all with his Mr. Beast Burger, suing the operator to close it down because of the reputation issues that he thought it created for him. Now that we've discussed what went wrong, we're about to talk about what went right about the ghost kitchen trend and how you can use that to grow your restaurant. If you're interested in continuously learning about the restaurant industry and the latest tactics you can use to grow your restaurant, I post videos on exactly that topic every week, which you can click the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with, to ensure that you don't miss out on the latest strategies and tactics that you can use to grow your restaurant based on my experience in helping thousands of restaurants grow through the company I run and have run for the past 7 years. Let's talk about the things that ghost kitchens actually did right that we can learn from in our restaurants. The first is the focus on the off-premise experience, because this is the fastest growing revenue segment for all restaurants by far, projected to be the majority majority of the restaurant industry within just 10 years. What that means, practically speaking, is making sure that the off-premise experience of dining from our restaurant is just as good as when people are seated within our dining room. Carefully optimizing for ensuring that the delivery bags are going to preserve the heat of dishes and be easy to transport, or that there's an easy takeout station for drivers and pickup orders to quickly grab their food. It's through designing this experience with such intentionality where we're able to get the best experience for guests that are ordering off-premise, that we're able to take advantage of this trend of more and more pickup and delivery orders within the restaurant market and ensure that it actually grows our restaurant versus disrupting it altogether. The key to takeout optimization is convenience, and what Ghost Kitchens really nailed here is through the DoorDash and Uber Eats app, they provided guests real convenience. The good news here is that that convenience doesn't have to come at the cost of having to pay 30% on every order or lose all of the customer names, emails, phone numbers, and relationships. By actually giving your restaurant concept its own branded app, just like Chick-fil-A and Starbucks and all of the other most efficient restaurant corporations do, you can ensure that the act of reordering from your restaurant is as convenient as possible to promote your takeout business and make it just a few seconds to order for pickup or delivery versus taking multiple minutes to find a restaurant on Google, then click into their website, then authenticate from scratch each time. It is all about optimizing for the fastest possible guest experience, and that's what we've built at Owner.com, where through our branded mobile app generator, restaurants are able to have their own branded app for a few $100s in a matter of seconds and give that app to their guests in a way that actually makes the reordering experience for them that much more convenient. That convenience doesn't just lead to more valuable customer relationships with customers ordering more frequently and lasting longer. It also leads to massive savings in fees because it means that guests are willing to go directly to your restaurant brand and order from your branded app or your website in place of the delivery apps. That is a key lesson to learn from the few concepts that have been able to turn takeout and delivery into a very profitable channel, unlike the Ghost Kitchens. They optimize first for convenience, and as a byproduct of achieving that convenience, they're able to save massively on every transaction. The other thing Ghost Kitchens get really right is being scientific in creating the restaurant's menu. Whereas physical brick and mortar restaurant locations often create the menu as a result of what that chef or the restaurant owner thinks is going to do best, Ghost Kitchens from the very beginning created their menus based on testing out how different dishes perform, the conversion rates on each, which ones would lead to the most amount of click-throughs, and then let the data actually showcase which dishes they should push the hardest and elevate at their menu. That scientific approach led to creating menus that, even with all of the brand building negatives and drawbacks that Ghost Kitchens faced, ended up leading to some kitchens doing millions of dollars. And physical restaurants like yours can certainly learn from this by ensuring that you're taking into account all of the data in your market about which dishes are most commonly searched for on Google and the delivery apps, which is available to you using the Google Keyword Planner or greater.owner.com, where it will find all of your top menu keywords and show you where your restaurant is currently listed in them, and then teach you how to optimize for showing up at the top of those searches. It's through that philosophy that Ghost Kitchens have been able to be so successful, and that your restaurant can as well. The way we've built our website builder at Owner.com, it automatically generates landing pages for every single menu item in your area to determine which menu items drive the most amount of clicks and new customers, and help you optimize your menu for those specific dishes that are going to lead to increased sales. You've now watched the video on what not to do with the Ghost Kitchens trend. If you're curious to continue learning about how to grow your restaurant, I made a whole video discussing what to do, where I studied the most successful restaurant brands from Starbucks to Cava to Chick-fil-A to Sweetgreen, and pulled out the most important lessons to learn from them that you can apply in your restaurant. So if you're interested in that, I put it to the right of me now. Click into that video and check out those lessons so that you can begin learning from the most successful restaurants of all time as you build yours.